Hey, happy Wednesday, everybody. Back here with another edition of NBA Breakdown. Hopefully, you were able to join the show yesterday. We had Sam on from the Source podcast. And if you listen back to that, there was a ton of good info in there. Obviously, the day ended up being kind of crazy with all the trades and big lines that were out there. But I think if you followed the show, you probably ended up hitting a lot of good angles. I had a great day personally, so that was nice to finally hit one of those. I know I haven't been posting Twix on Twitter lately. Hoping to get something out a little later today about what's been going on with that, but I am doing it on BetStamp now. And so if you are interested in seeing my picks, I'll probably get that link out there eventually, but hit me with a DM if you would like those before I get to it. Otherwise, let's jump into the slate today. I think we have 6 games on the slate today. A couple interesting spots. We'll see what we can find. So first game up, we have the Spurs at the Cavs. Cleveland minus 5.5, 216.5 total. Karis LeVert is expected to play here, so that's good for the Cavs. I mean, they're missing guard play with Garland, who's been out. Garland is a game-time decision, though, and I do think that's pretty significant in this spot. Karis LeVert should step in and help them some. He's better than what they've had to work with at guard for sure. We'll see how he works in the long run, but a positive for them to have him. But I think Garland being in or out is still significant because it's hard to know how quickly LeVert will work in to the rotation, how he'll fit in, I guess, not whether he'll be in the rotation. We do have San Antonio coming in with 4 days of rest here. So a pretty unique situation when you go and look at 4 days of rest on the season. San Antonio's only had that one other time. In that one instance, they scored 123 points and won by 26. So, hey, we know it's a lock to take the Spurs here, right? Because they crush on 4 days of rest. Yeah, obviously not the case. It's one game. You can't really tell anything from it. But saying that's an interesting spot to be coming in. Cleveland, on the other hand, is on 2 days of rest. They're 6-3 against the spread on 2 days of rest. So, not a bad spot for them either. As far as San Antonio, they have been scoring again pretty well recently, like they were earlier in the season. Some of their recent scores, 131, 120, 110, 131, 110, 109. They do have a 95 in there and a 102. But the thing is, they have actually been playing some pretty good defenses. That 95 that they put up was against Miami, who's been playing really well on defense here lately. In that stretch of games that I just shared with you, they played Golden State, Phoenix, Memphis, Philly, and Oklahoma City, who's been playing well on defense. So San Antonio's not putting up these point totals just against slouch teams. They've played a couple easier teams, but they're actually playing some good competition and still scoring the ball well. San Antonio has allowed 104 or more in 9 straight games and 115 or more in 6 of those 9. So this is pretty normal for San Antonio, even when they're playing well, that they play well on offense. It's a little like Minnesota in this way, where the offense is going to be strong. The defense might not be quite as strong. So you'll see some higher scoring games. San Antonio has played 12 of their last 14 at home. So they're going back on the road here. Not sure that it should affect them too much. Again, they've had a long time off, but it is always just noteworthy to me when somebody's had a really long homestand or a really long stretch on the road. Cleveland has scored 105 or less in 5 straight games. And granted, they've had Garland hurt and not had all their personnel, but they've also scored 105 or less in 8 out of their last 9. They've been under 100 in 4 out of those 9. So Cleveland has not been able to score. And this is where I say, I think Karis LeVert coming in will help them, but I think Garland playing still makes a significant difference in what we should expect from Cleveland offensively in this game. Cleveland's defensive rating in their last 6 at home, on the other hand, 99.5. So you can see we have one of these clashes setting up again where it feels like a team in the Spurs that are rolling a little bit offensively, but also allow a lot of points. But then Cleveland, on the other hand, they haven't been able to score, but their defense has been really, really solid. And so which one of those is going to win out? It's tough. Tough to know which way to go with this. As far as some trends, the Spurs are 8-1 against the spread in their last 9 road games versus a team with a winning home record, but they're 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 games following an ATS win. So, trends leading both ways there. Cleveland 1-6 in their last 7 games as a favorite. Certainly that has a decent amount to do with who's been playing. And then the under is 6-0 in the Spurs' last 6 following a straight up win. Under 5-0 in the Cavs' last 5 playing on 2 days of rest. So a couple things pointing to the under there. Here's where I'm at with this game. I kind of like the Spurs. There have been a lot of favorites winning lately in the NBA. And if Garland plays, it makes me way more hesitant about this because I think there is a decent chance Cleveland covers this if Garland plays. But if he doesn't, I'm going to count on the fact that LeVert isn't just going to enter the lineup and click on all cylinders right away against a Spurs team that really has been playing pretty well. And is getting, I said 5.5 here, but I think it's up to 6 now. So getting a decent amount of points. If Garland plays again, less confident in that. And then in terms of the over-under, I think if Garland doesn't play, I would look at the Cavs team total under potentially. But if he does play, then I actually would lean more toward the over. I think the Spurs should be able to put up at least 110 points. Maybe they don't absolutely go off. But if the Cavs do the same, then we're looking at an over on the total there. So again, just some leans. If you're seeing other stuff, definitely take that into consideration because this isn't a game that I have the most confidence in, but that's sort of what I'm seeing when I look at this one. Next up, we have the Bulls and the Hornets, Chicago -1.5, and then an absolutely massive total at 237, which is kind of crazy to me, but we'll get to that. I understand why it is 237. I just think it might be a little crazy in this spot, but Chicago and Charlotte are both on 1 day of rest, and they've both done pretty well in that spot, 20-14 and 20-15 against the spread. So nothing to see there. Ayo Dosunmu is out with a concussion, and I think that does matter. He didn't have a good game in his last one, but he's been playing the point really well, distributing well, lots of assists, just really, really controlling that offense in some solid ways. Now, with having Levine back, that matters maybe slightly less because they have DeRozan and Levine on the floor now, but they're still missing Ball, Caruso, a lot of guards. So having Ayo out certainly isn't a positive. Chicago has been scoring like crazy. They've scored 120 or more in 4 of their last 8 games, and they've scored 108 or more in all 8 of those games. So obviously with a total like 237, 108 is not very many points, but to be over 120 half the time in your last 8 games, that is pretty damn solid when it comes to offense. So we definitely have to take into consideration they've been scoring. On the other hand, they have been kind of allowing a decent amount of points too. They've allowed 114 or more in 7 of those last 8 games, and the other one was 105. So this is the quintessential team. Again, I would say like Minnesota right now, play a lot of offense, don't play a lot of defense. Charlotte, on the other hand, they had a stretch where they were playing solid defensively, but not as true here lately. They've allowed 113 or more points in 6 out of their last 8 games. So those point totals for opposing teams are moving north again. And they haven't been scoring well. In their last 5 games, they've scored 107 once, but their other 4 are 101, 101, 90, and 86. And that's actually my big reason here where I think this total of 237 is pretty crazy. I mean, Charlotte certainly has the offensive potential where they are going to break out at some point, but we're talking about a team that's been struggling to make 100 at times. And we're going to put that total up at 237. Just seems pretty elevated to me. Charlotte, another thing here on that note is that they've been atrocious at home. Their last 7 games at home, their offensive rating is 101. That is terrible. Their defensive rating is 108.4, so that's pretty solid. That would be fine for a Charlotte team that's playing well on offense, but that's not this team. In those games at home, the last 7, their plus minus is -7.4. So they're getting beat up at home. In their last 10 games, their offensive rating also on 1 day of rest is 104.7. So to me, there's no way you really slice it that this looks like a good spot for Charlotte. I dove in a little bit deeper into their home road splits over the last 10 games, and it just doesn't look good. Field goal percentage, 41.3 at home, 50 on the road. 3-point percentage, 26.6 at home, 39.7 on the road. Free throw attempts, this is a crazy one, 20.9 at home, 30.7 on the road. So they're attempting 10 more free throws a game, shooting 13% better from 3-point range and 9% better from the field. Just, I know they have to break out of it at some point. And that's, you always fear the negative regression game that you go in on somebody, the game that they're actually going to come out and turn it around. But this team's been crap lately, especially at home. And so I definitely don't see a reason to bet on them. If you want to stay away because you think they're going to bounce back, that's fine. But I don't think there's any indication here that this is a good spot to bet on them. Chicago has been a little bit better at home than on the road in their last 10. Primarily, they've shot it a little bit better from 3 at home, but really most of their statistical categories are pretty similar between home and road, a little bit more consistent. So you can tell where I'm going with this one. I mean, I think it's a good spot for Chicago. I did already take Chicago -1, knowing full well that Charlotte isn't going to continue to be as bad as they have been for the long run. If today's the day they break out, then so be it. I lose a bet. But at -1.5, I'm willing to take that chance. And if I was going to look at the total here, I would definitely not play the over. I would consider the under, but Chicago has been scoring a ton. So I might also consider specifically the Hornets team total under. That's the way I'm looking at this game. Next up, we have the Raptors and the Thunder. Shout out to Blaze Bets on Twitter. If you do not follow him yet, you absolutely should go do it. The guy is sharp. And I give him a shout out because he's been right about the Raptors. I've crapped on them some, but I have been wrong. The Raptors have been freaking phenomenal lately. The Thunder, not so bad themselves. I mean, terrible scoring the ball, but not terrible in terms of keeping games close and playing good defense. So I think this is going to be an interesting game. Both of these teams, again, are on 1 day of rest. Not a lot to see there in terms of against the spread with 1 day of rest. We are up to 10 games now on the no Shea watch, where Oklahoma City has scored 104 or less every single game in regulation without Shea. And they're going to be without him here again today. It's hard to imagine that a good defensive team like the Raptors, or decent defensive team at least, is going to be the one where they break out of that trend and go over 104. Now, their team total is set at 99.5 or 98.5, depending on where you look. So the books are onto that too. They're not expecting the Thunder to score a bunch of points here. Now, Toronto has allowed 100 or more in 12 straight games. A lot of times it's been close to 100, but it has been over. If they do that against Oklahoma City, I think the Thunder cover this spread. I mean, the Thunder have not been playing good offense, but they have kept games close and kept other teams from scoring much. And Toronto's a team that slows down the game, so the pace should be slow in this game and limit possessions for both teams. Oklahoma City has scored under 100 in 6 of their last 10. The other 4 were 103, 103, 100, 110. A lot of that without Shea, so we kind of covered it. They have allowed, though, 100 or less in 4 out of their last 8. So that's where I say they're playing good defensive basketball. In their last 5 on the road, Toronto's held opponents to 30.4% from three-point range. And Oklahoma City doesn't shoot the three well to begin with, so I don't think Oklahoma City is going to be able to rest on that. Toronto, on the other hand, has shot 33.3% or better from three-point range in 10 straight games. In their last 10 games, though, when Oklahoma City plays at home, they've only allowed 31.3% on average to their opponents. I think this is the spot where the game could be kept close, is if Oklahoma City closes out well, makes Toronto drive to the basket, makes them get 2 points at a time, doesn't allow Fred VanVleet to just stand out there and bomb threes. I think that they can keep the game close if they do that. In their last 10 games at home, Oklahoma City has lost by less than 10, which is where the spread is now, 7 times. So 70% of the time here, they're losing by less than the spread is today. Could probably tell where I'm going here. A couple trends to look at. The Raptors are 2-9 against the spread in their last 11 road games with a team that has a losing home record. Thunder are 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games following a straight-up loss of more than 10 points. The under is 8-1 in the Raptors' last 9 road games, and the under is 7-0-1 in Thunder games in the last 8 after allowing 100 or more in their previous game. Now, this matchup specifically, the over is 8-3-1 in the last 12 meetings, so we do have to note that. So here's what I'm thinking in this game, at least right now. So I did actually already make a play on the Thunder at +10. I think with a game that's this low scoring and a team that's been playing well on defense in the Thunder, 10 points is just too much. Again, obviously I could be wrong, but that's the way I feel about it. In terms of the total, now that it's down to 206, I'm watching to see if it drops further. I think that this is a game that could be played relatively closely with both teams getting around that 100 mark. So I think it's probably lined pretty accurately. And I wouldn't be too interested in either team's total here. If anything, it would be Toronto's team total under, because that's going to be the one that's up, near, at least near 108 or something like that. So the total is something I would stay away from for now. Back when it was 210.5, it probably was a good play on the under, but probably a little bit more accurately lined now. Next up, Lakers at the Blazers. Those unstoppable LA Lakers are -9, and the total is 223.5. Obviously sarcastic there. The Lakers have freaking sucked. But so have the Blazers, so that's what we get in this game. Lakers are on a back-to-back. Actually, both teams are. Lakers are 5-2 against the spread on a back-to-back, 5-2 to the over. The Blazers are 4-7 against the spread on a back-to-back, so a little bit of a lean for the Lakers there in terms of that specific stat. For now, it looks like everyone on the Lakers should be playing except Carmelo Anthony. All the people that Portland just traded from New Orleans and the Clippers. Sorry, brain moving slow today with lots going on. I don't think many of them are going to be playing. Winslow is probably the only one. So they're going to be incredibly shorthanded again for the second game in a row. And that doesn't bode well for them on a back-to-back where you've got a bad team that isn't playing well, can't score, and then you have a limited number of players and put them on a back-to-back. It feels like a recipe for disaster. That's probably why the line is where it is. These teams did just play on February 2nd, and the Lakers won a barn burner 99-94, a game that I hope nobody had the displeasure of watching. A couple other things here. Portland's on a 6-game losing streak. Losses by 18, 29, 17, 14. They did lose 2 of them by 3 and 5, so they kept them a little bit close. They've shot under 30% from 3-point range in 3 out of their last 5. And those other 2 games were 33.3% and 31.1%. So they're just not shooting the 3 well. And now they have even fewer 3-point shooters because they've gotten rid of people and have people out. This is a team that even against a bad defense in the Lakers, it's hard to just imagine them going off scoring. The Lakers do average 5 more points per game this year when LeBron is playing at 112.6. But again, even if they get to that 112.6 or a little bit more, that doesn't give me any confidence, at least on the over on this total today, especially because the Blazers have scored 95 or less in 4 out of their last 5 games. This is a team that is probably the worst offensive team in the league right now. I mean, if I had to pick an offense between the Blazers as they're currently constructed with everybody out or the Thunder, I would take the Thunder at this moment. So I don't want to spend a lot more time on this game. This game opened a lot closer. I might have been interested in the Lakers at, even 4.5 or 5.5. 9's too much for me to take the Lakers against any team in the league because they just suck so much of the time. If you really pushed me, that's the side I would take because I'm definitely not betting this Blazers side. So if anything, what I like here is to look at the Blazers team total under. I think it's inflated a little bit because the Lakers defense has been so bad, but Portland has so few places to turn to get any kind of scoring. And I think that team total is around 108.5 or 109.5, something like that. So I don't think that's a bad spot to look at if you are interested in something on this game. Just my take on it. Next up, we have a rematch of yesterday's game between the Wolves and the Kings. Got to rep the hat again. Hopefully we get another big win for the Timberwolves. Well, maybe not that big because they're playing a crappy team. But, hey, every win is big for the Timberwolves. We need all of them. Minnesota -9 in this game, 235 total. Not a ton that I'm going to say here just because I covered a lot of it yesterday. But let me just say a few things about both teams being on a back-to-back. Minnesota's 3-4 against the spread. The Kings are 5-6 against the spread. Not much to see there. Sacramento, though, has scored 108 or less in 9 out of 11 on the back half of a back-to-back. That's not great when you're playing a team that puts up points like the Timberwolves. Minnesota, on the other hand, has scored under 110 in 3 out of 7 on the back end of a back-to-back. However, they have scored over 120 in 3 straight in this situation. So there's those lower totals were earlier in the year, and lately they've still been lighting it on fire on the second half of a back-to-back. Now Minnesota, like I said, they play offense. They don't play a lot of defense. They have allowed 134 points in their last 2 on the back end of a back-to-back. However, those games were against Phoenix and Atlanta, who both have strong offenses that have been playing well lately. Before that, they allowed 104 or less in 4 straight in that situation. So that's something I think we have to take into account. Sacramento does have De'Aaron Fox back. However, with how much he's been out, who knows if he plays again tonight on a back-to-back. And he did have a great game yesterday. So it helps them a ton offensively to have him in. There's no doubt. I'm not going to count on him playing again. And this team, with the trades they've made and stuff and people being out, they're still not a good team. Other than that, the back-to-back stuff, the breakdown is the same as yesterday, which heavily favored Minnesota. Now the spread is wide at this point. -9. I have a hard time laying that. Even though I love the Timberwolves and they're becoming more trustworthy, I don't trust them completely in this spot. I definitely don't want the over here because I think there's a good chance the Kings sputter and don't put up tons of points. If anything, I would consider the under. I haven't taken it. The other thing I would consider is the Kings team total under. Then you just hope potentially Minnesota goes off, but Sacramento doesn't. So this is a tougher game for me to actually take positions on because I think it's probably lined pretty well, and I don't see tons of upside on betting angles for this one. Last game of the day, the Warriors at the Jazz. Utah -2. I've seen 1.5 some places, 2.5 some places, 224.5 total was most recently what I saw. Golden State on 1 day of rest. Klay Thompson is not going to be playing. This is the front end of a back-to-back, so he's sitting out today and he'll play tomorrow. Utah's on 2 days of rest, and they are 6-3 against the spread on 2 days of rest, so pretty good for them. We also have Kavon Looney, who's a game time decision here. I think that matters some just because the Warriors don't have a lot of size without him, and Draymond Green is out. They have Kuminga, but I wouldn't consider that like the kind of size that does well going up against Azubuike or Whiteside if he plays. So Utah definitely could have a little bit of an advantage on the inside here, but Rudy Gobert is still out, so it's not going to be a massive advantage. The Warriors are 6-3 on the front end of a back-to-back. So this has been a good spot for them overall. I mean, that's the same as what Utah is on 2 days of rest. So maybe that washes out. And the Warriors, they went through this season where they were really struggling on offense after Draymond Green went out. And then when they were trying to work Klay back into the rotation, really struggling. I mean, not even hitting 100 a lot of games. It feels like they've worked it out. They've scored 110 or more in 7 straight games, and they've scored 120 in 5 of those. I know Klay's not playing tonight, but he hasn't been the main reason. He's helpful for sure, but he's not the main reason they've been scoring again. I think the Warriors are clicking to some extent again. I'm not saying they're going over 120. We don't need them to. But I think that they continue to score on offense, especially because the Jazz with Gobert out are not the same team defensively. Now they have Joe Ingles out as well, which maybe it affects them on both ends of the floor. I mean, they just are struggling in terms of personnel a little bit. And obviously they got Donovan Mitchell back. So that's massive for them. And it definitely helps them. But I still think they are shorthanded. And I think Golden State is rolling offensively some. The Jazz, since Donovan Mitchell came back, they've been doing well offensively too. It's just 2 games, but they scored 125 and 113. So fantastic. They have been playing well on defense, allowing 104 or less in 3 straight games. However, you have to understand who they played. They played Denver without most of their starters. They played Brooklyn, who's absolutely atrocious right now, another team in the running for worst team in the league at the moment. And then they played the Knicks, who aren't very good on offense most of the time, a little bit better on the road, but not good. So I take that number of 104 less given up to those 3 teams with a grain of salt, because none of those teams do you expect to put up massive numbers. In their last 14 games, going back to Golden State, their offensive rating has been about the same home or the road, 114. Their defensive rating is 4 points better at home, 105 to 109, 105.2, 109.5. But they have played faster on the road as well, which is interesting. They've played at a pace of 97.36 at home in the last 14 games and 100.42 on the road. So enough to be a little bit significant to me that they're playing faster. When we look at offense and defense for Utah on the other side, it's been much better at home. Their offensive rating at home, 115.9 compared to only 108.1 on the road. Defensive rating, 110.9 compared to 117.9 on the road. Now, what I'd say about that defensive rating is 7 points better. Obviously, that's big, but it's more that their defense has been terrible on the road than that it's been locked down at home. 110.9, I'd almost expect something a little better than that with who they've played. So I don't think that's anything to be too scared about. So what I like in this game when I look at it, I mean, at this point, with the Warriors feeling like they're clicking a little bit again, especially with a Utah team that has Gobert out, it's going to be hard for me not to take points if you're going to give them to me with Golden State. So I do like Golden State. I actually did take a play on them, and it was +3.5 at that point. Even at +2, +2.5, I like it okay. I mean, I don't. I think this is probably a close game, but I actually would favor Golden State a little bit in this spot. So I would probably flip it the other way and make them -1.5, -2. So I feel like there's a little bit of value there. In terms of the total, I do like the over here. Man, I wish I had gotten it. It dropped down to like 219.5 or 220.5 for a little, and I didn't get on it then. So I don't get to play that, but I'm kind of okay with it. I mean, I think both teams score in this spot. I mean, we only need this game to get into the one teens. I mean, yeah, obviously, I've said this for every freaking game. Obviously, it might not, but it feels like a game to me where these teams should score some. I might even consider Golden State's team total over. You get the lower number of the two, and I don't think they're going to be the team that doesn't score. So that's something that I would consider as well. All right, that's the breakdown for today. Hope it's helpful for you. Again, if you could give me a rating, review on the podcast, retweet, give me a thumbs up on the YouTube channel, any of those things, I just appreciate it, guys. I love doing this and getting to share the info, but if it's helpful to you, I'd love for you to do those things so maybe it can be helpful to others. Also, always love the comments and interaction. If you're seeing different things, hey, send me a message and keep me off a bad bet tonight. I'd appreciate the help if that's where you're at. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter at NBA Attack. It's right on the screen. If you're on the podcast, it's NBA TTACK. In the bio, there are links to the podcast, the YouTube channel, all those different things that's happening. Once I make that switch to Betstamp more public and talk about what I'm doing there, I will get a link out for that as well. So that's it. Hope it's a great day for everybody in the NBA. Have a good one, and I'll see you.